Most gardeners think it's too early to sow when it's still frosty, but in fact now is the perfect time to get some key vegetables started if you want to grow the most productive garden this year. So if you're itching like I am to get on and grow something, whatever the weather's doing, well, you've come to the right place. So let's start with a hardy staple, onions. Now, garden-grown onions are in a league of their own, and if you've ever cut into your own homegrown bulb as the start of a home-cooked meal, well, you'll know what a pleasure it is. You can start onions from sets, which are basically immature bulbs, but I prefer to, when I can, start them from seeds because they are far less likely to bolt, which is when they flower prematurely before producing a decent bulb. And also growing from seeds, well, it's a little bit cheaper. I'm going to be sowing into a plug tray like this. Now this one's got 40 cells or plugs and they're a good size, which means that it'll support our seedlings well on until it's time to plant them in kind of early to mid-spring. I keep my trays stacked up outside, so I have to check the bottoms here for any slugs because it's happened to me before. There's been a big whopper that's then climbed through and you know, kind of eaten the seedlings. I don't know if climbing is the right word. There is, by the looks of it, a little wriggly worm there, so I'm just going to tap him out here. There we are. He'll be all right there. Great. Now we're ready to sow. And I'm going to use an all-purpose potting mix, just straight in like that. But I'm going to finish it off with a finely sort of sieved or screen layer so that I've got a nice smoother kind of potting mix texture for what are actually quite small seeds to kind of get into. So there's the bulk of it filled like that, and then over with the sieved stuff. And then with it filled, I'm just going to level it off and make little sort of firm it down a bit, which will make little sort of depressions, cups if you like, to hold our seeds in. Now I'm sowing today a variety that produces bigger bulbs. I don't really care whether I get big bulbs or not, but my logic is that if I get sort of, I don't know, less than perfect conditions, by emphasising towards a bigger variety, I should at least get medium-sized bulbs. The logic may break down a bit, but that's kind of my thinking anyway. So what I'm going to aim to do here is sow a very small pinch of seeds into each little plug. Now I'm aiming for somewhere around 6 seeds. It doesn't matter too much if it's 5 or 7 or even 8, but 6 is ideal. You can sow onions anytime from midwinter really to kind of early spring, but getting an early start like this means in theory we should get a slightly earlier harvest. And what that means is that the ground will be freed up that little bit sooner so that we can then plant on some sort of follow-on crop that will grow from the second half of summer and on into autumn and winter. So something like chard or kale. It just makes the maximum use of space that you have. And then once they're all sown, just cover them over with just a little bit more of that sieved potting mix like that. Perfect. Doesn't that look lovely? Now to water them, you could use a watering can fitted with a very fine rose so you get that nice gentle drops. You don't want to blast the seeds out having sown them. I find this pump action hand sprayer really handy. It just gives a lovely fine mist and you can go over it a few times without unsettling the seeds. Another option would be to put this tray in some sort of reservoir filled with water so that the water gradually percolates up to the top, and once you can see those beads of moisture on the surface, just lift it out and it's all good to go. Great, well that's us done. Now I'm going to bring these inside to germinate, just in the general background warmth of the centrally heated house rather than any heat mat or anything like that. And then once they're up, they will come back out here. I could just leave them here to germinate, that's fine, but it'll just speed things up a bit by bringing them inside and up the chances of a slightly earlier harvest. If I get really good germination, then I might remove excess seedlings, so I've only got between 4 and 5 seedlings per plug, and then they will grow on exactly as they are, together in a clump, and they'll be planted out together as well and grown on like that. And I'll plant them out about 30 centimetres or 1 foot apart in both directions, so in a kind of grid format. And they'll grow on like that till harvest. We've come indoors to start off our next crop, chili peppers. Now chilies need a nice long growing season, so starting them off super early makes good common sense. if you can offer them warmth and once they're up, additional light at this time of year, well then you're good to go. And let me show you what I'm going to be sowing. Now I'm sowing some packets I opened last year. These are mild or at least not super hot varieties. And that's a really good thing. It means I'm going to be getting a more reliable crop because these slightly milder varieties tend to crop a bit sooner, which is a good insurance against a kind of washout summer. Chili peppers like it nice and warm at all stages of their life. So what I've done is I've actually brought in what I'm going to sow into last night so it can warm up to room temperature. So it's nice and cozy, like a blanket for our little seeds. I've got some sieved or screened all-purpose potting mix, then some coir fibre or coconut fibre, and then just for added drainage, this is optional, but I think it helps, a good couple of handfuls of perlite. It's super light and will help it drain through nicely, which again our chili pepper seeds will love. It's a little bit on the dry side, so I'm gonna wet it first and then give it all a good mix through. Perlite can throw up quite a bit of dust and it's not really great to inhale, so mix it really slowly and carefully, or if you've still got one of these, remember these, pop it over just as a precaution and then get your hands in and mix it all up. There we are. Certainly wetting it all will help the perlite not to sort of fluff up into the air. I would get in so much trouble if I was caught with all this dirt on the kitchen surface. But luckily I'm the only one home alone today and you're not going to tell on me, are you? Right, I really am going to have to make sure I tidy up before I finish. We're just going to fill our pots with our mix and then sow across the top. And in a nice square pot this kind of size, what, 4 inches or so, or 9 centimetres, I'm gonna sow 9 seeds. So there'd be 3 across and 3 deep, if that makes sense. And then lightly cover it over with a bit more of the same mix, lightly tamp it down, and then don't forget to label it, especially if you're sowing more than one variety. Sowing them into pots like this rather than into their own plug cells actually means there's more efficient use of space early on when we're kind of using heat mats or, you know, kind of lights and so on. So it means they can grow on these pots as individual seedlings for a bit longer, and it just makes a more efficient use of space. Chili peppers like it nice and toasty to germinate. Ideally a minimum of say 75 Fahrenheit or 24 Celsius. So what I've done is I've popped them into this tray here, and I'm going to pop over a humidity dome, so it's like a little propagator here, and that will raise the humidity and trap that warmth a bit more. And then to help get that minimum temperature, I'm going to pop it onto a heat mat, which I've already set to that temperature. Now just to kind of insulate it a bit better, not essential, but it's going to go on this sort of layer of old packaging here, this kind of wool packaging. That will help to reflect or keep the heat in from the bottom, and then on goes our little tray like that, and then pop in the sensor so we can make sure that it indeed gets to that temperature. If you don't have a heat mat or electric propagator or anything like that, then a simple low-tech solution is to pop over a clear bag like that and just secure it in place with an elastic band like that. Now this can go somewhere, anywhere that's consistently warm. So for example, next to a boiler or on a nice warm sunny windowsill. And it won't germinate as quickly, but it will germinate. Once the seedlings have come up, they will need some additional light. Some grow light set to around 12 hours a day would be perfect, essential at this kind of time of year when days are short and daylight a bit weak. If you haven't got any grow lights, then I'd maybe consider starting your peppers off maybe a month later once the daylight is just that little bit stronger. And then once the seedlings are up, you can create your own little light box by creating a 3-sided card lined with either something white or reflective like tin foil to bounce back the light on the windowsill. Now my seedlings will go back outside into the greenhouse from about mid-spring once it's consistently warmer and there's no danger of frost out there. With their brilliant white heads and hearty eating, cauliflowers really are the cream of the crop, the bee's knees, and I absolutely love them. And if you would like to know more about growing this truly winning vegetable, a sowing to harvest guide, I will link to it in the video description below. What I especially love about cauliflowers is that they have such a nice long harvest window from early summer right through to autumn, depending on when you sow them. Now take these seedlings here for example. I sowed them a few months ago in the autumn, and now these will tick over through the winter to plant out in very early spring to give my very first harvests. But sowing now in winter will give us our next precious harvest. Now for sowing today, I'm going to be using a variety called, rather appropriately, all year round. And it's being sown into sieved or screened all-purpose potting mix. I'm just taking a little pinch like this and scattering it over the surface, and then we'll cover it over. Now I could sow my seeds directly into plugs, but again, it just makes a slightly more efficient use of space as I'm germinating them, and then I can make sure that each plug eventually has one neat little seedling in it. And then in with a label and a good drink of water. Cauliflowers, like other cabbage family plants, really don't need much heat to germinate, but I will bring them indoors nevertheless because it will help them come up a bit quicker. And then they'll just go on a windowsill in there, and then when they have come up, they'll come back out here to grow on, and the seedlings will be carefully teased apart and then potted on into their own little plug. If you don't have a greenhouse or cold frame, then another way to enjoy a super early start with cauliflowers, as well as many other hardy cool season crops, is to what's called winter sow them into milk jugs. So let me show you how it's done, but first I will show you what I'm going to be growing. So I've got a lovely pointed cabbage here called Caraflex, which can be sown anytime from now all the way through to early summer to give delicious, nutritious, compact heads all summer long. And then I've got an early sowing, early cropping variety of leek called Jolant, and this will be ready from the early autumn onwards. So I'm using ordinary milk jugs, and to get them ready, all I've done is speared some holes into the bottom using a sharp pointy screwdriver, and that just allows for drainage. And then I'm just filling them with my usual all-purpose potting mix. And you'll notice here that the lid is still attached to the bottom, or rather the top of the jug to the bottom on this hinge here, and that just means it won't blow away. And I'm going to be sealing it all up with heavy-duty duct tape once we're done sowing. And I'm going to sow the usual pinch of seeds nice and evenly across like that before covering them over and adding my label. Now once these milk jugs are done with in the spring, and I've got my little seedlings here to move on, they can of course be washed out and recycled, so there's no waste or accumulating microplastics in the garden or anything like that. And now I just have to seal them shut. These will go outside into a kind of sheltered spot just away from extreme winds or whatever, but they're going to be at ground level, so that'll be fine. And the beauty about winter sowing like this is that it's not very technical. These seeds will come up in their own time when they're good and ready. That may not be for a week, 2 weeks, or it may not be for several weeks, but they will know and they'll just come up. But this little bit of extra protection here will afford them slightly more warmth and protection from buffeting winds like that, and you'll get probably seedlings coming up maybe 3 weeks ahead of ones that were sown directly outside. This kind of spot here is perfect, just nestle them down together like that. Keep the lids off so that the rainwater can get in and keep things sort of slightly damp. They'll still be warm and cozy enough in there. And once the seedlings do come up, bring them maybe onto a table to gently tease them apart and then pot them on into their own little plugs or pots to grow on. And then you can just plant them out as you normally would in spring. You could also try this method with early salads such as lettuce, and I'll link to our video on winter sowing in the description below. And now for the moment I've been really looking forward to, planting some garlic. Absolute joyous stuff. This is my favourite vegetable of all. Now so far we've planted into pots, plug trays, even milk jugs, but it's about time we got our hands into the soil and released all those beneficial bacteria as we get on and plant these beautiful cloves. If I'm honest, I'm a little bit behind with my garlic. I usually try to get it in by the end of autumn, but midwinter is a really good time as well because much of the cold period is still to come. And garlic does need a chilling spell. What that does is it signals to each clove that you plant to divide into multiple cloves to form a full new bulb. I'm planting two types of garlic today. So one is a soft neck variety called Mersey White, which apparently keeps for up to 10 months, though garlic never lasts as long as that in our family. And then the other garlic I've got is a hardneck variety called Carcassonne, which I think is in the south of France. It's described as having a strong and punchy flavour and a superior bouquet. I've never heard the word bouquet used with garlic, but well, you know, maybe it does. And the ground here has been nicely prepared with a good sort of layer of compost. It's in a nice sunny spot, or it will be once the grey cloud finally shifts and we get into spring. And I think they'll be very happy here. That's us all laid out. Now you'll notice that some cloves are a lot smaller than others, but that's fine. If you've got lots of small ones, you can perhaps leave them out and just plant them in a pot purely for their leaves because they'll form much smaller bulbs. But if you've got the room, just include them anyhow. And then to plant, go in with your fork like that, or trowel even, and plant to a depth of about 2, maybe 3 inches deep. That's 5 to 7 centimetres, just like that. And we want the pointy end of the clove facing upwards. I should say they're also going in about 6 inches or 15 centimetres apart in both directions. Now once these are planted, I won't have to do much else, to be honest with you. They won't really need watering until spring or whenever the soil begins to dry out. I will pull out the occasional weed, and then from mid-spring we will see phenomenal growth ready to lift our bulbs in kind of early summer. And that's it really. Now if you want our full growing guide on garlic, I will link to that video as well in the description below. It might still be very early in the season, but now is your chance to plan ahead for well-deserved success later on. Plan your bumper harvests now by taking a few moments to plan what will go where and when. And to help with that, check out the no obligation, completely free 7-day trial of our really rather beautiful garden planner. Just follow the QR code or link over here, or for more for winter sowing into milk jugs, check out this video next. I'll catch you next time.